Story begins with Kay, a land surveyor arriving at a snow-covered village dominated by the looming presence of the castle. The castle sits atop a hill, shrouded in mist, cold and distant. Kay is determined to reach the castle and fulfill his purpose, but from the very start he's met with confusion and resistance. The villagers are wary, the roads are winding, and the castle itself seems both ever-present and unreachable. This is not just a place, but a symbol of impenetrable authority. The atmosphere is cold, gray, and unwelcoming, setting the tone for Kay's endless struggle. He wastes no time and tries to make contact with the castle's officials. He is told to wait to fill out forms to speak to intermediaries who seem to have no real power. The process is slow, repetitive, and maddening. Each step forward is met with another obstacle, another cold instruction. The villagers offer little help, and the castle's bureaucracy reveals itself as a labyrinth with no clear path. The sense of frustration grows as Kay realizes that every attempt to reach the castle only leads him further into confusion. Castle's bureaucracy is a maze. Kay is shuffled from one official to another, each with their own set of rules and paperwork. The offices are cold, the faces expressionless, and the answers always ambiguous. The repetition of forms, signatures, and waiting rooms creates a sense of endlessness. Kay begins to suspect that the system is designed not to be navigated, but to exhaust and confuse. The castle remains distant, its authority absolute but inaccessible. The gray, monotonous visuals reinforce the sense of futility. Paperwork becomes Kay's daily reality. He's handed forms to fill out, only to be told later that they're the wrong ones or that he must start over. The officials speak in circles, and the rules seem to change without warning. The repetition of these tasks is both numbing and infuriating. Each piece of paper is a barrier, not a bridge, and the castle's authority remains as distant as ever. The cold, gray aesthetic mirrors Kay's growing sense of isolation and frustration. Kay is constantly redirected to intermediaries, messengers, assistants, and clerks, none of whom have real authority. Each promises to help, but their words are empty. The chain of communication grows longer and more convoluted. Messages are lost, instructions are misunderstood, and Kay finds himself repeating the same explanations over and over. The castle's authority is always just out of reach, filtered through layers of bureaucracy. The repetition of these encounters adds to the sense of absurdity. Despite his efforts, Kay never gets closer to the castle itself. It remains a distant silhouette on the horizon, visible but unattainable. The villagers speak of the castle with reverence and fear, but no one seems to know how to actually reach it. Kay's frustration mounts as he realizes that the castle's authority is both omnipresent and intangible. The cold, gray visuals emphasize the emotional distance and the futility of his quest. The term Kafkaesque comes to life in Kay's experience. The rules are arbitrary, the logic circular, and the system designed to frustrate. Kay is trapped in a cycle of hope and disappointment, each new attempt ending in the same dead end. The repetition of cold corridors, blank faces, and endless paperwork creates a sense of surreal absurdity. The castle's authority is absolute, but its purpose and process are unknowable. Though surrounded by villagers and officials, Kay feels utterly alone. The people around him are either indifferent or complicit in the castle's system. Conversations are brief, formal, and unhelpful. The cold gray palette of the visuals underscores Kay's emotional isolation. He is an outsider, never truly accepted or understood. The repetition of failed interactions deepens his sense of alienation. Waiting becomes a central motif in Kay's journey. He waits for messages, for meetings, for decisions that never come. Time stretches and blurs, each day indistinguishable from the last. The repetition of waiting rooms, clocks, and silent corridors reinforces the sense of stagnation. The castle's authority is always pending, never present. Kay's patience wears thin, but the system remains unmoved. Kay's conversations with officials and villagers go in circles. Questions are answered with more questions, and clarity is never achieved. The repetition of these dialogues becomes a motif, highlighting the futility of seeking understanding in a system designed to obscure. The cold, detached tone of the officials only adds to Kay's frustration. The castle's authority is maintained through confusion and miscommunication. Occasionally, Kay is given hope that he is making progress, a meeting scheduled, a form accepted, a nod from an official. But each time the progress proves illusory. New obstacles arise, old ones resurface, and Kay finds himself back where he started. The repetition of these false starts reinforces the sense of futility. The castle's authority is a mirage, always just out of reach. Visuals throughout Kay's journey are cold and gray. Snow falls endlessly, the castle looms in the distance, and the interiors are stark and uninviting. This aesthetic is not just a backdrop but a reflection of the emotional landscape, detachment, frustration, and futility. The repetition of these visuals reinforces the mood and the themes of the story. Castle's authority is faceless. Kay never meets the true decision-makers, he only encounters their representatives, each more powerless than the last. The repetition of faceless authority figures, voices behind doors, signatures on papers, creates a sense of impersonal power. The system is vast, cold, and indifferent to individual needs. Narrator's tone throughout is one of mounting frustration. Each new obstacle, each repeated task adds to the sense of helplessness. The cold, detached delivery mirrors Kay's emotional state. The repetition of phrases and motifs in the narration itself becomes a reflection of the story's themes: endless struggle, bureaucratic absurdity, and the impossibility of resolution. The villagers, though seemingly powerless, play a role in maintaining the castle's authority. They follow the rules, repeat the instructions, and discourage Kay from resisting. The repetition of their warnings and advice creates a sense of inevitability. The system is self-sustaining, and Kay is an outsider who cannot change it. Days pass, but nothing changes. Kay waits, fills out forms, and is sent away. The repetition of this routine becomes a motif, emphasizing the endlessness of his struggle. The cold, gray visuals reinforce the monotony. The castle's authority is unyielding and K's efforts seem increasingly pointless. Castle's authority is a constant weight on K's shoulders. Every action is scrutinized, every request delayed. The repetition of obstacles and denials creates a sense of oppression. The cold, gray aesthetic underscores the emotional burden. K is not just fighting a system but an entire way of life built on bureaucracy. K oscillates between hope and despair. Small victories, a friendly word, a promising meeting are quickly dashed by new setbacks. The repetition of this emotional cycle mirrors the structure of the bureaucracy itself. Hope is always followed by disappointment. The cold, gray visuals reinforce the bleakness of K's journey. Castle is more than a building, it is a symbol of unreachable power and endless bureaucracy. Its presence dominates the village in K's thoughts. The repetition of its image, distant, cold, and unapproachable, reinforces its symbolic weight. The castle's authority is both everywhere and nowhere, a force that cannot be confronted directly. K tries to resist, to question, to find a way through the system, but each act of resistance is met with indifference or subtle punishment. The repetition of failed attempts at rebellion highlights the futility of fighting the castle's authority. The cold, gray visuals reinforce the sense of hopelessness. K finds himself in endless corridors, both literal and metaphorical. Each hallway leads to another door, another official, another form. The repetition of these spaces creates a sense of being trapped. The cold, gray palette makes the corridors feel even more oppressive. The castle's authority is a maze with no exit. Routine is a tool of control. The repetition of daily tasks, the expectation of compliance, and the normalization of delays all serve to maintain the castle's authority. K is slowly worn down by the monotony. The cold, gray visuals reinforce the power of routine to suppress individuality and hope. K has many questions but few answers. The officials dodge, deflect, or ignore his inquiries. The repetition of unanswered questions becomes a motif, highlighting the system's refusal to engage honestly. The cold, gray aesthetic underscores the lack of warmth or humanity in the castle's authority. Time weighs heavily on K. Days blend into weeks and the seasons change, but his situation remains the same. The repetition of clocks, calendars, and changing weather underscores the endlessness of his struggle. The castle's authority is timeless, unchanging, and indifferent to individual suffering. The castle's bureaucracy exists to preserve itself. Every rule, every delay, every form is designed to maintain the status quo. The repetition of these mechanisms creates a sense of inevitability. K is not just fighting for access but against a system that resists change at every turn. As K becomes more entangled in the castle system, he begins to lose his sense of self. The repetition of forms, numbers, and official titles replaces his name and identity. The cold, gray visuals reinforce the dehumanizing effect of bureaucracy. K is no longer a person but a case file. Failure is a constant in K's journey. Each attempt to reach the castle ends in the same way: denial, delay, or indifference. The repetition of failure becomes a motif, emphasizing the futility of resistance. The cold, gray visuals reinforce the bleakness of K's situation. There is no resolution to K's story. The castle remains unreachable, the bureaucracy unbroken. The repetition of unanswered questions, failed attempts, and cold visuals leaves the viewer with a sense of unease. The castle's authority is eternal and K's struggle is never-ending. K's struggle is not just his own. The castle represents any system of power that is distant, unaccountable, and indifferent. The repetition of bureaucratic motifs, forms, waiting rooms, faceless officials makes the story universal. The cold, gray aesthetic speaks to anyone who has felt powerless in the face of authority. Video ends as it began. K stands at the edge of the village looking up at the distant, gray castle. The snow falls, the sky is overcast, and the castle remains silent and unreachable. The repetition of this image brings the story full circle, emphasizing the endlessness of K's struggle. The cold, gray aesthetic lingers, leaving a lasting impression of frustration and futility.